Hey there, thanks for tuning in. You're watching Dirt Bike Channel. I'm your host, Kyle Brotherson, and I've got Logan Eversole with me, and we are going to talk 300 fuel-injected two-strokes. Stick around. Okay, Logan. So we spent all day riding. We went out for a ride. And we came back. We had some lunch at the truck. And we rode a bunch of different bikes. But primarily, what I want to talk about today are the two fuel-injected 300s that we ran. So first, really briefly, just tell us how long you've been riding and what your current bike is right now.
Yeah. So I've been riding off and on again for a little over a year and a half or so. Had a little stint where I stopped riding because I broke my finger, but the bike I'm riding right now is the KTM 2017 150 XC-W.
Cool. And you love that bike, right?
I absolutely love that bike.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, that was a bike that we reviewed on the channel, and then you fell in love with it. So you've been on that. So you're really comfortable with the XC-W platform, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to get your insights on this, because you're kind of coming into the sport a little bit, but you're really comfortable with the XC-W platform. So then we put you today on two different fuel-injected 300s that have that wide ratio transmission. In fact, they have the same forks, more or less, as your bike right now. So the gearing is similar, the forks are similar, but the motors are very different.
Very different.
Than what you're used to. So kind of walk me through, with the KTM, and just for the viewers, the KTM we had just had all the suspension revalved on the front and the rear. And so it's not maybe apples to apples because the TE was a stock. The Husqvarna was stock, whereas the KTM was not stock. We did that on purpose. Tell me what you felt throughout the day, which bike you liked better, were you more comfortable on one than the other? Just give me some of your thoughts.
Yeah, so just starting off with positioning on the bike. I sat on, first I started off on the Husqvarna, and right off the bat, I did not feel comfortable. I don't know what the hand grips are supposed to be. It's a very similar setup between the two bikes, but that was the first thing I noticed. It felt funny. Something felt off.
It's a different bend on the bars, we found out.
Yeah, the bend or whatever, it just instantly felt a little funny. Whereas when I got on the KTM, it was super familiar. It made me, I felt like I was on my 150.
Yeah. Same bars. So it's probably pretty much the same handlebar setup. Because I set both bikes up and I tend to kind of do them the same way, and so it probably ended up. Yeah. And then you've obviously changed some things on yours, but it's same bars.
But the same bars, and even the stance, the position, because the rear suspension is the same as well.
Except for it's got a new shock on it. It's completely revalved with a different spring, but it's the PDS still.
It's got the PDS, and so the way it reacted felt similar.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, I did not like the Husqvarna. Just riding it, it just felt, everything felt a little funny. Right, the first time I was on it. Mm-hmm. But then the second time I got on it, I actually thought I liked it more than the KTM. I was shocked. I don't know what it was. Because I rode them back to back and just kind of kept switching back and forth between them. And it was honestly the next bike I rode, I thought I liked more. It was like the last bike I rode, I thought was a little bit worse than the one previous. And so I think some of that was obviously me getting better on both bikes, but in the end, through the whoop sections that we went through the sand, through everything, I still think I'd give the edge to the KTM. And some of that, again, might be just my preference or what I'm used to, but they were really neck and neck. I mean, all day long, I thought, wow, I like this KTM a lot. No, I like the Husqvarna better. No, I like the KTM better. It just so happened that I started on the Husky, and so that was the one that I thought I didn't like. Once I got onto the KTM, I was like, oh, I'm at home. And then I got on the Husky, and I was like, oh, why did I think that I didn't like this? I actually really do like this. And then I was like, oh, no, I like the KTM more. No, I'm pretty sure I like the Husky. I don't know. It was a back and forth day, but in the end, having gone through everything we did, I think still just by a little bit give it to the KTM, the TPI.
Yeah. What about the motors? Did you notice any difference between the Husky versus the KTM motor, the way the power came on?
Not. I thought that I did, but overall I thought they performed very similar. I wasn't surprised by what they did back to back, riding them back to back. It wasn't like one caught me off guard.
Yeah.
Obviously, both of them are very different than my 150, and so that was again a learning curve. But compared to each other, coming off of something completely different, going to these two and switching back and forth. At one point, I was joking that if I had been blindfolded, I wouldn't be able to tell them apart, which obviously I could because of the stance and other things. But going through the whoop sections and other things that we were doing, I don't think there was a big difference.
Yeah.
At least not a big one that I could tell. Cool. In my novice state of riding.
So last question for you then. So you're on the 150 now, and you've been riding that for what, about a year-ish?
About a year. Well, it was almost exactly a year ago in February or March
that I started riding it, or you.
I bought it.
Okay, yeah, because you'd ridden it a little bit before that.
I had, and because it was that fall before that I had fell in love with. I went out.
That's
and I was
right.
just
we were out at
just
Chimney
in
Rock
love
camping,
with
right?
that. Yeah. And then
So my question is then, and we've covered this well, you love the 150. You don't want to sell the 150. You mentioned that tonight at dinner. Do you think that you're ready? And if you are ready, because you also rode some 250s today, do you think you want to get a 300 two-stroke, or do you want to wait a little bit longer? I mean, just kind of tell us what your thoughts are. Riding the bikes today, do you kind of have that bug where it's like, now I have to have one? Or are you okay hanging out without one for a while? No right or wrong answer, just curious.
Yeah. It's interesting. The 150, and again, my history being very much downhill mountain bike, is a mountain bike with a motor, and so I really, really like the 150. But with all the bikes we had today, I mean, we had 6 bikes, I think, 7 bikes or whatever it was. And to play in that league, because all of the bikes were 250s and 300s, and to play with these bikes, to swap in between them, they were all very similar, minus one of them. They all performed very, very similarly. And so to play with the big boys, you kind of got to have one of the big boy bikes. Yeah. And so that's what it told me is I have loved everything the 150 has done for me. From coming off my first bike, technically it's my second bike, but it's taken me to a new level. But there's the 250, 300 level that I just you can't learn it without riding them. You cannot learn that from the 150,
Yeah.
and learning how to control the throttle without opening it all the way, learning how to clutch it to modulate the power, not just get more power. Like the 150 does. You modulate the clutch to get the power, not to soften the power. And you can't do that unless you're on those bikes. Yeah. And so that's what it taught me, to ride these bigger bikes, to really master that level. Not to take anything away from my 150, because I love the 150 and what it's done.
Sometimes you just need a little more power.
Yeah, and
it's nice to have. Some of the hill climbs we did today in the deep sand, it would have been difficult to do on the 150. Very difficult.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
Somebody else could probably do it with my 150, but I couldn't do it with the 150.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, and I hope we get some more riding in tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thanks, Logan.